Hey now, it's Rob here from Rob's School of Music, and on today's podcast, we are hanging out with the legendary Richard Fortus. Rich has been a part of Guns N' Roses for the better part of the last 20 years, from the Chinese Democracy era all the way through the current Not in This Lifetime version of the group, featuring returning lead guitarist Slash and, of course, Duff McKagan on bass. He's been hanging with Axl longer than just about anyone, and it's so cool to get to pick his brain and talk about what it's like to be in Guns, Thin Lizzy, his thoughts on amp modeling, theory, how he got started. Stick around. This is an incredible interview with so much to unpack, and we're so grateful for the time he gave us. Enjoy, guys. Rob's School of Music interviews, and we are featuring today the incredible, I can't even say it, man, Mr. Richard Fortus. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Brother, this is, I'm speechless, and that doesn't, I'm a talker, so that doesn't happen often. So thank you so much for your time.
So is this is like your guitar school, right? In New York?
Yeah. So we have a physical location here in New York. It's about 40 minutes or so outside the city.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing lessons. You know, we had over 100 students, guitar, bass, drums, piano, audio production, bands. And then COVID came, and we had to move everything virtual.
Right.
And I just tried to adapt super fast. And, we've done like over 4,500 virtual lessons since, which is just a blessing. But yeah, I am Rob from Rob's School of Music.
All right. So how many of those lessons are one-on-one?
It's all one-on-one. Everything is private.
It is. Okay. Everything's private. Cool.
So like our teaching philosophy is like, we try to, teach someone the way that they kind of want to learn. If they don't want to learn, modes, I'm not going to jam it down their throat. I'm going to say, okay, well, what's a song you like? And then we'll kind of use that song to kind of through the back door, teach them all the things that maybe they didn't.
Right. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's super cool. But let's start with you. So legendary career. We'll pick it apart along the way and unpack everything. But I think one of the most fascinating questions is what was there a particular record, or was there a show you saw, early on, and you're like, that's what I want to do?
There's so much, really, because I remember I was into music young. I started on violin when I was 5. And I played violin. I mean, I still play violin. I played all through school, played cello as well. And I also got a drum kit around that age, around 6 or 7, probably. And I remember, I don't know if there was a particular moment, but I remember there was a show that came on. My father was in the music business. My father worked, he's an accountant, but he worked for a company that made instruments, okay, like a distributor. So it was called St. Louis Music, and they made crate amps and Ampeg and Electra guitars and Alvarez. And so I was around a bunch of musicians my whole life. And though he wasn't a musician, there were always guitars in the house, and I was always, around it. And so that I was always exposed and, curious about it. And then I remember discovering, so I was into classical when I started as a kid. And then I discovered, rock and roll through I inherited my aunt's record collection.
Nice.
She became a born again Christian and gave me all her secular albums, right? So which was an amazing collection of classic rock. So it was like the Rolling Stones and all the Beatles stuff and Humble Pie and Black Sabbath and all the classics. And so that's what I like, just lived that. It was like my greatest treasure was her collection of records, and I studied everything, and then that's really what kicked everything off.
That's awesome, man. I think, it's always cool to see which elements. I remember once I started to get into music, I made it a point to go back and buy everything on vinyl that all of my heroes were listening to
Yeah.
You know, like I was born in the 80s. So like all the 90s bands, the 80s bands, that's what, you know, I grew up on, but I wanted to get the entire Zeppelin collection on vinyl, all the Beatles records on vinyl, because I wanted to hear it, how the people that I was being influenced from heard it originally. I think there's
Right.
something about opening up the record, throwing it on the
I,
turntable.
yep. I was the exact same. I would read so my father's company would advertise in all the rock magazines at that time. You know, this is before Guitar Player. So you had Cream magazine and Circus magazine and Crawdaddy and you know, it was all those type of magazines. So I would read these articles about these artists that I liked, and they would talk about their influences. So that's how I would get into, you know, I did the same thing that you did and
Cool.
went back and would listen to their influences.
I think
You
it's
know,
the coolest way to kind of just, there's so much, you know, history with music, and then just to kind of see, well, this leads to this and this leads to that. And I heard that lick somewhere else. Oh my God, that guy wrote that lick, but no, he didn't. He took it from this guy. And we're
right,
all
right.
sharing, you know, this knowledge.
Hmm.
So when
And it
guitar,
just keeps going back further and further. I mean, if you get into Zeppelin, right, and then from Zeppelin you go, oh well, wait, they stole this from Lightning Hopkins. So then you go and listen to Lightning Hopkins, and then you go and listen to Muddy Waters and Son House, and like, you know, it all, you see where they get everything, you know, and that's and
exactly,
how that where they, because nothing's truly original, is it? You know, everyone just sort of puts it all together.
100%, 100%. So when you were first, you know, getting into guitar and starting out, this is a question there is no right answer to it. So I'll start with that. Were you letting your ear guide you, or was there lessons? Was theory a big part of what was happening? Is it at all?
Um, Both. I mean, I started out, you know, I already had, I learned violin through the Suzuki method. Okay.
Wow.
So my ear was already developed when, by the time I picked up guitar, I was like 12, 13. You know, I'd been listening and picking out drum parts, you know, and learning all the drum parts to all my records, you know. And then, you know, that's, my ear was pretty keen, and I also had dexterity in my fingers already from violin. So I was able to really pick up and learn guitar really quickly. And I had friends that I learned from and was able to then listen to records and figure out everything.
Got it.
Man, now it's amazing what's available, you know, as far as learning. I mean, YouTube is just like this, it's incredible. It's this wormhole that, you know, there's like never a shortage for things to learn.
I have so many videos saved of things. It's like I feel like I'll never be able to learn in my lifetime everything that there is out there that I want to learn, because there's so many people. And I feel like this is something that we deal with our students here, is there's all of these Instagram guitarists that are just completely shredding, melting your face right off down to the bone. It's just disgusting. But I
Right.
feel some of these younger players, you know, they'll come to me to be like, Rob, you know, like, here, check out this video. I'll never be able to do that. I'm like, dude, I'll never be able to do that. Like, don't let that frighten you. Like,
But what's fascinating is that most of them won't be able to do it either. Most of the people that did the videos, because they're speeding it up, they're slowing,
I
you know, it's like, you know, that whole thing. So, I
know,
mean, you have to take that with a grain of salt. I mean, it's interesting because it's such a interesting phenomenon that somebody can become a famous guitar player via the internet. You know, to me, it just seems so strange that, you know, they're sitting at home playing with, you know, writing tracks, whatever, you know, and recording and then miming along with them to make it look like they're just, you know, it's all just smoke and mirrors in a lot of ways.
dude, I love you said that, because you just literally lifted up the curtain, and that's something I'm saying all the time. Like, you got to choose to be inspired by this. Don't be intimidated, because there's a lot of trickery going on that, you know, people don't really realize. So I completely agree with what
Hmm.
you're saying. It was strange too. The last time I was out at the NAMM show, the last NAMM show there was, you know, the lines to meet these Instagram guitarists were as long or longer than, you know, the Steve Vai line. And I'm like, well, wait a second, like, this guy doesn't.
Really?
Yeah, it was gnarly in the weirdest way. And I'm like, I'm not putting these people down. Like they're talented. Like, I don't want to misquote myself there, but I don't know. Like I find like a big thing we do here is we take all of our students, I call them all kids, that just they're kids in their journey, beginners in their musical journey. And we put everyone into bands. We put them into a group. We have a big jam room in the back. We have, we're right on the main road in our town here. So we have twice a year, they have like a big street fair, and we have all the kids play, all the musicians play. And, you know, being in a band, a lot of young musicians, they're not playing with bands. They're just jamming with YouTube or jamming with themselves. And I think to me, like, when you're playing with other people in the room and there's the pulse and the give and the take, I think that's so important, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that to me, that's all music is. I mean, it's really strange for me to sit around and play because, you know, music is a language. It's, you're conversing with somebody, you're having a conversation with somebody when you're jamming with them, you know? And I grew up doing that. Like we'd get together and we'd all play, you know, and everyone would, you know, it's what it was. And it's just very different when it's so isolated. But, you know, it's the hardest thing about getting into a band is when I was a kid was finding people that were like-minded, you know, that were into the same type of stuff as you and were as driven and as passionate about it as you are. And, you know, I see my daughter, I have a 13-year-old, and she's in school like you have. And she's a singer and guitar player in a band.
Cool.
And yeah, she loves it. But she's really fortunate that she was able to hook up with and connect with kids that are into the same type of stuff as she is. They're older than she is, but you know, she loves it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think finding the right people is very important. I mean, we had a particular group of kids here that unfortunately a lot of them have gone off to school, but it was like
Right.
some older guys playing guitar, a younger guy playing drums, and a younger girl singing. And this girl singing Zeppelin and Rush and Van Halen. And I'm like, what year were you born? Like this is incredible that this still exists in the next generation. That's probably my favorite part about, you know, this whole music school thing is getting to watch the next generation coming up. And, you know,
Right.
this nonsensical, you know, rock is dead thing that's really not true. You know, there's still a lot of people coming out there who want to rock out. And I love it.
That's great. Yeah, my daughter's not into any of that. Yeah, she's really more into indie stuff and
That's
you
cool
know.
too.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
music is music. That's the coolest thing. But I think having, you know, dudes like you know, you're out there like, all right, let's do this question. Okay, so we're gonna start at now and we'll work our way backwards. So you've been
Okay.
a member of Guns N' Roses for 20 years now, right? Is
Just
that
about, yeah.
which is incredible from the Chinese Democracy lineup all the way through, you know, the original guys coming back, and you're just there the whole time as an incredible constant. When that gig first arose, what was your process in having to learn all of that material? Because I think that's very daunting to a young musician. You know, how do I learn all the songs?
You know, I did a gig about 9, 10 years ago. I did a tour with a band called Thin Lizzy,
Yep, I know that.
and they were a huge influence on me. So for me to learn that stuff, and that's pretty complicated stuff. You know, there's a lot of harmonies, and it's like the nuances are. It's much more nuanced. So learning, you know, matching vibrato to because there's so many harmonies. You know, with Scott, with the other guitar player. So matching his vibrato, and you know, I really spent a lot of time on that and shedded every day. So I'd sit, get my cup of coffee, you know, write down my notes. And you know, I don't like to, when I'm doing a gig like that, I don't like to write music out because then I find that I rely on it.
Right.
So I force myself just to eschew that, just stick with the music or with my, just listening with my ear and going over it and over it and over it, you know, and you just play it just like you do with any song. You sit, listen to it, and you really pay attention to the details, you know, and the little things, and then trying to figure out. I mean, now there's, when I started with GNR, it wasn't like it is now, even though it was, just 20 years ago. You didn't have the internet with every song from every band, available with, somebody sitting there showing you how to play it. And a lot of times, just so you're aware, you want to watch like 6 or 7 different videos of those, if people should, because they all have different takes on it. And you'll think, what, that's not right. I watch videos of my, where people are doing my stuff, and I'm like, wait a second, that's not right. But everybody has their own take on it, and so you listen to as many as you can, or videos. Like now, if I'm learning something, and I want to go watch to get me in the ballpark, and then I just use my ear, and because 9 times out of 10, it's a little bit off. But yeah, I sat down, and when I started with Guns, I sat down and really focused on the parts and listened. And then if there were any live videos of the original band that I could see, I would watch as much as I could to find, but you hear if somebody is doing something up on the 7th fret, or if they're doing something down at the bottom of the neck, because there's so many enharmonic notes across the guitar, where you have the same note in different places, so, or the same chord, so you can, in different voicings. So, you really have to, and a lot of times it's, when I'm learning songs, 9 times out of 10, I'm always going to go with whatever is the easiest, because that's generally what it was, what they were doing originally.
Totally agree.
And, you think, man, how did they voice that and then switch here and, pick this up? And then you're like, wait a second. It's all just, they used a capo and it's at the 2nd fret. There's like, it's almost always easier than what you think it is initially.
Yeah. I love that you said that regarding the videos out there. I always try and tell the students, there is no governing force on YouTube nor ultimateguitar.com saying if this is right or wrong. And that really forces you to use your ear to, exactly, you said, that doesn't sound right. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Guitar is tricky like that.
It really is. Yeah. Piano, there's only one place you can play a middle C,
I use that, right? There's a piano in every lesson room here. So back when we had in-person lessons, I was constantly referencing, like, this is laid out literally in black and white for you. And now we have this mess of wire and wood, and we're going to figure out how we can play the same note, 12 different ways.
Yeah. And in school, when you're in music school, that's, you've got to, everyone has to learn theory on piano, because like you said, it's literally in black and white. But getting back to your question about learning, when I was growing up, so I started off by ear, and then I started taking lessons. I think and I still do. I still take lessons. I still buy instructional things. Even my friend, from my friends. When they put out something new, I'll buy it, and because I'm just constantly trying to. I'm always looking for inspiration in any way, and so I'm always still learning, and I still have a teacher that I go to occasionally, when it's really when you want to, because through your musical journey, it's always, there's hills and plateaus and valleys, it's like any journey.
Sure.
And sometimes to get out of those plateaus, to move up again, you need something to inspire you. You need somebody to open a door for you.
I completely agree. And that's especially guitarists. I find a lot of them plateau. I'll, be holding auditions for a gig or something, and we need a rhythm guitarist, and he'll come in and he's playing the same way he played when he was 13 years old, because he learned one thing and never learned anything else. And I think we need those disruptors. For me, like, in my teaching style, like, yeah, we're going to give you the tools for whatever direction you want to go, but I'm going to make sure you learn those 7th chords, and you're going to learn your inversions, and you're going to learn your modes, just because these are things to do it. For me, when I went to college, I was a rocker through and through, and I'm like, I'm going to take a minor in jazz guitar, because I need to get better at this thing. and it just turned my whole world upside down. And I'm still a rock guitar player, but just having that vocabulary, I completely agree.
But you're a rock guitar player that can play over changes.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is my secret superpower.
Yeah, I mean, it's essential when you're a professional. I mean, you know, you've got to have those skills there. You don't have to always sound like you can do that, but it's in your back pocket when you need to.
100%. And that's the best place to have it. Oh, look what I can do.
Right.
Okay. So in terms of the gigs and everything, one of the usually the question I open up with, but I kind of wanted to wait a minute before we got to it, is, dude, you've played on stages that I can't even fathom the amount of people and the moving parts going on and everything. And for such an incredible career throughout so many different, you know, steps through it. When musicians are starting out, one of the biggest things when we put our students into bands and have them play, that, you know, they get stage fright, they're nervous, anxiety, all those sort of things. And, you know, we could go into a whole rabbit hole about how life does that to you also, but I'm always curious to hear, you know, do you have any tips how you've dealt with those sort of things, or does that not even happen any longer, or can you remember?
No, it does, you know, especially when it's a situation where, you know, when I'm touring with GNR, it's like the stage is the most comfortable place to me, you know, because it's our stage. It's our gear, it's our in-ear mixes, you know, it's our physical stage. It's the same every night. And it feels like being at home.
Cool.
Okay. But when you go to play a club or when you go to sit in with somebody, you're nervous, you know, because now you're not at home. You're in somebody else's home. But, you know, it's just part of life, man. You know, you just got to do it. And the only way to get over it is to do it, you know. And I grew up when I was 15 years old, I was playing clubs, you know, every weekend we were playing clubs, you know, my band, we started playing but when I was a kid I grew up in St. Louis and there were underage clubs. So I would play every week at an underage club, you know, and we played different underage clubs and, you know, and parties and stuff. And that's how I got over that.
Yeah.
You know, it became comfortable for me.
I totally, you know, for me, and this is kind of, you know, and I love that perspective. Actually, it's a weird connection there, because when I asked that question to Bumblefoot, Ron, he had a very similar response as to when it's on the, you know, full stage with it's my gear, it's no big deal. When it's some fly date and it's you know, SAR is giving me the back line and the amp's not working, that's a different story.
Right.
For me, I'm a very shy person outside of music. I've had this mustache since I'm 13 because of my Italian heritage. So I was able to get into the all age clubs always. And that's how I overcame all that sort of stuff. But I completely agree. It is a part of life, and getting through it is just, you know, it comes with the gig.
But drinking age was 18, right?
No, it's still 21 for me. It's 21.
It was 20. Okay. Okay.
But I wasn't drinking, but I mean, I was in the, you know.
Right. Well, of course not.
Yeah. I don't, never.
Yeah. So you had Ron on.
Yeah.
Man, that guy can play anything.
He the first time we talked about, you know, just similar stuff that we're talking about, the second time he literally gave us a crash course in the business side of things, like publishing and pitching stuff to, you know, for syncs. And I was just sitting there like, I'm trying to interview, but I'm taking notes at the same time because I'm like, oh, professor, thank you. Yes. Awesome. Yeah. So you've done a fair amount of session work as well. Now, when you're preparing for a gig like that, is that a similar thing where you're just listening to the material before? Does someone tell you?
It's rare that you go into a session having music beforehand.
Right.
I mean, I would, you know, most of the sessions that I did, I was living in New York, and I would just go from session to session.
Mhm.
every day. Like I I had a cartridge company that would take, I'd talk to the producer and I'd find out what they were looking for, what the gig was. Was it a hip hop session? What was he looking for? Like a big rock guitar sound? Was he looking for, nylon string? You sort of suss it out
Mhm.
what they're looking for, and then I would know what gear I wanted to send to that gig, to that session. And then I would make notes, and I'd have my cartridge company, I'd say, hey, take an AC30, the number 4 AC30, and then take my 64 330 Rickenbacker to that gig. And then I would usually bring pedals myself. Like I would pick out what I wanted. Everything was like, a big part of being a professional, especially a session player, is knowing your gear and knowing how to speak the same language as the producer. And to do that, you have to know your music history. You have to know if he says, so producers generally don't speak in, they speak a very unique language. I mean, as musicians, we speak in references a lot of times. So they'll say, I'm looking for, I want to do like a big Paul Kossoff type of solo on this, but I want the verses are real, like Tom Petty-ish, Mike Campbell type of tone, and then looking for a T-Rex type chorus sound, and then knowing, okay, well,
That sounds like a cool
Kossoff,
song.
Kossoff is I'm going to take a burst, and I'm going to take a 50-watt Les Paul or a 50-watt Marshall. And then for the Tom Petty stuff, okay, I need an AC30 or a Bassman, and then you know how to get the sounds there that producer is looking for and how to deliver, and then being able to go, okay, this is the type of part, and that's what gets you hired. That's what gets you hired again, because the producer knows that he can make references and you're going to know.
Mhm.
If he says, and that, you have to, not just classic rock, but you have to have, if they say, well, I'm looking for like a uh Yo Bum Rush the Show type guitar part, or She Watched Channel Zero, that type of thing, but like a Portishead type of trippy, you know the references, and so speaking that language, because as musicians, we're obsessed with music, right? And we always listen, and you need to listen to everything. If you want to do that type of work, you have to, and not only know the references, know how to play it, and know what they were using, how to get that sound, how,
Yeah, that's awesome. What a cool perspective. I've spoken to a couple of session guys throughout this, and no one explained it that well. That really, kind of made me. As you're saying those things, I'm like, okay, well, what would I bring? How could I make that? It's almost like a painter, and you know how to mix the certain
right.
color.
That's,
Get
I
yeah.
use that, I use that analogy often. I mean, really, a lot of guys, like Ron, will he is a very, he does his thing. He doesn't have a huge palette to work from, because he's very, I mean, he like I said, he can play anything harmonically, like as far as with his fingers, he's capable of anything. There's nothing that guy can't play. Um, but I think the reason I worked as much as I did as a session player was because I was able to speak that language, and I knew all the reference points, and I knew all the gear, and there's a million guys that can play what needs to be played. 9 times out of 10, man, I know I've said 9 times out of 10 quite a few times already today, but really, the stuff that you need to play is not going to be hard. It's not going to be complicated. Most of the stuff that sessions that you're playing, you're playing stuff that's boring, You know, you're playing, you're not boring. It's stylized, you know, you're doing what's essential. And it's not like super flashy, you know, most times. And occasionally it's gonna happen, you know, they're gonna say, hey, do a solo here that's like, you know, like just totally go for it. You know, and then you can be as flashy as you want to be, you know?
Yeah. No, I think, you know, playing to the gig, right? Like, you know,
Right,
you're rolling in
right.
this
And
mission.
as a
Yeah.
session player, you're it's not about you.
Mhm.
It's about the song. And
Sure.
it's about giving the producer what he wants, you know.
So then, speaking of gear, you
Hmm.
just referenced such incredible equipment. What is your opinion? And there's no wrong answer here, but um, with modeling technology, you know, it's come pretty far. But at the end of the day,
I use modeling technology every day. I've been using it for years. I've been using it since it first started out, like with the Line 6 stuff. Um, you know, I did pop gigs where it was essential to be able to switch scene changes, you know, where you're dramatically, because if you're doing a pop gig, you're covering 20 different players.
mhm.
Okay, like I toured with Enrique Iglesias. Um, or better example, Rihanna. I toured with Rihanna. Rihanna has a ton of different people producing and playing and writing, you know, her stuff. So, you know, in the course of a show, I'm covering 20 different guitar players and 20 different producers, you know. So you've got to cover a really wide range of sonic territory.
Yeah.
And so modeling amps are really useful because you can do complete scene changes. And what else you can do is they're all MIDI.
Voice or piano. So check it out, and we're back with Richard. Cool. Oh, good. No worries, brother. It happens.
All right. So what were we talking about?
I don't know. I was trying to subside my own panic attack while we were away, so I don't remember where we left off.
Um,
We're
okay.
talking
Well,
gear, modeling stuff. That's what we're talking about. So,
oh, right, right,
so,
right. Very good.
so,
So modeling was a big, you know, I still have an Axe FX 3 right here. You know, a Kemper, I use the Ox. I see yours back there.
yeah,
I
actually,
use
affects.
that every day.
Yeah.
But I always use real mics as well. I always use a real amp. I'll use um I'll use an Axe effect sometimes to supplement. So in other words, I'll model one amp on one side, another on the other side, and then put a real amp in the middle. You know, I'll mic up a real amp. Same with the IRs. The same with the aux, with the speakers. I'll I will use a tube amp, but I'll be using a modeled cab, taking a step out, but I'll also have a mic'd cabinet as well.
Cool. I like the hybrid kind of, you know, making. I think that's my philosophy on it is they're all tools. So use what we have access to. You
Right.
know, if taking an Axe Effects or a Kemper on the road makes it sound the same everywhere you are and you don't have a lot of people to set up your gear, then there is nothing wrong with that. You know, it's only
Right.
sneaky guitar players who stand at the lip of the stage or at the back of the room and look down at your pedal board and say, oh my gosh, there's Boss pedals on there and not some crazy boutique pedal. Ugh.
Right. Right.
It just
Now,
sounds good.
I will say that, like, you know, Slash and I both tried Kempers out in rehearsal once. Um, it doesn't work for us. For what I do with GNR, it doesn't work. Because we rely so much on our volume knobs on our guitars.
Yeah.
So in other words, I use a single channel amp with guns,
Really?
and it's all about the volume knob. So if I want a clean sound, I just roll my volume down. And with a
Wow.
tube amp, With a tube amp, it gets clean and pretty sparkly, you know, and that's Slash does the same thing. And always there's so many tones just within your volume control,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we're always all. If you watch live videos, both of us are constantly on our volume knobs because we're always just subtly adjusting things to get the exact sound that we want.
I love it.
You
That's
know,
like a long art, you know?
it is, because a lot of people now, if I was in Muse or Metallica and I was just open and I was either getting a really clean sound or a really dirty sound, you know, a Kemper would work, you know, Max Effects would work. But all subtleties and nuances are lost with that stuff.
Completely
So
agree.
for what Guns does, you know, Joe Bonamassa use a and get by, but Muse can, and it's still effective, you know.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. So we spoke earlier before we were on air regarding your work with BT. I love his work. How did that relationship, you know, forge?
Man, I've been working with BT since, I guess, Movement and Still Life. We did I've worked on so many movies with him. He's a fantastic composer. I actually was just doing today did a classical guitar cue for him for a video game.
Wow.
A video game score. We've been I forget how I originally got connected with him. I probably through to do a session to work with him on either a movie or an album. Because I think the first movie he was Go, and then we did a ton of stuff together. And I love working with him. I actually just did a new project where this is going to get pretty heady, but we rented out this old studio. It's this studio that's in a 150-year-old church, and they specialize in Atmos recordings, mainly classical. So Atmos is a system that if you have it's immersive audio. Okay, so if you've got like 120 different speakers, you know, all around a room, you know, a lot of movie theaters now are switching to Atmos. So you'll have all these speakers, and basically what we did was we had a combination of guitar or cello, whatever I was doing, and him sending all these audio signals to all these different speakers. And then each speaker was mic. So we had, I think, 28 different speakers throughout this church. It sounds, it's hard to get your head around, really, but we did it just because we wanted to do this experimental record. And it's just now, we did it last year, and now it's just coming to fruition where we're actually getting it mixed. And, you know, so we have to go to Skywalker Ranch to mix it because we're one of the only facilities that has it. Anyways,
Dude,
he's that level of genius, though, you know.
I love it, dude. I will nerd out on that stuff all day long. I'm on Clubhouse all the time listening to these guys talk about, you know, that level of brain power. I'm like, please just feed it to me. You know, I think
he's the one that sent me my Clubhouse invite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've been in a few different rooms with him. But yeah, he's a true genius.
Awesome. It's funny. I was in the process of purchasing the Stutter Edit 2, and I sent him a DM on Instagram, and I was like, dude, like, can I apply this to guitar? And he says, Richard Fortus does it all the time. And I was like, oh, okay, well, then that's the stamp of approval I need. Yeah. I'm trying to get him on here. I'd love to, you know, feature him too, because we get a lot of guitar players. We don't get a lot of people on that side of the musical spectrum, and we have an audio production program, so I know, you know, the students would eat that up. But Awesome, brother. Wow.
Yeah, man, he's an incredible talent. It's just difficult to follow him. You know what I mean? Because he's so lofty. To it's easy to, dude. I have to stop him all the time. I'm like, I need you to bring it down. You need to dumb it down about 20 decibels. You know, he's just so crazy smart.
Yeah. Dude, but I think
But
it's inspiring, man. I think it's
yeah,
cool, you know.
it is. It's definitely, he's an inspiring person to be around.
Awesome.
And his orchestral scores are absolutely stunning. They're so good, and he gets better and better with every project.
It's inspiring, dude. It's, you know, I think that's for any guitar students, you know, watching this. I think this opens up your mind to the bigger picture that music is music, and you know, it doesn't matter what the I'm going to butcher the analogy, but it's like if you were if you created art and you drew with a pen and ink, you're not a pen and ink you're an artist, and just the pen is your tool. So as musicians, like, guitar is my primary way of getting the sound out of me, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways. And I think hearing, you know, the appreciation for other musicians and hearing the appreciation of other styles, we're all on the same team, you know, we're trying to do the same thing. And it's super inspiring.
Yeah. Well, I mean, guitar might be your medium,
Mhm.
but you know, music is art. And
Yes,
you know, that's just because you're a painter doesn't mean you can't sculpt as well.
exactly. You get it. Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're gonna do a gear question before we get to my this or that series. If you were on a desert island and you can have one guitar and one amp and one pedal, what would you take with you?
Probably a really long guitar cord to hang myself.
Best answer yet.
um Man, okay. Okay. I would say my 73 Les Paul Signature is a very obscure guitar. It but it is the most versatile guitar and that I own, probably, and inspiring. Um, do you know what they are?
I don't. I'm like, my phone's to the side. I'm like, can I casually look on Reverb as he's talking?
Wait, I can show you one. Okay,
Oh,
and a Tweed Twin,
cool.
uh, and then a Klon.
Fair enough.
I mean, just because if you're gonna have one pedal, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
I asked that.
or better yet, an Archer.
Okay. It's a little more stable. I asked that question to Zach
It's
Myers.
not that it's more stable. It's just that you're not going to feel as bad if you get sand on the, you know, from the island,
Right,
if you get sand in the pedal.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
And it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So anybody that tells you that it's not, or that they can hear a difference, I've had Klons, I've used Klons live in my live rig. There's no difference. Hold on. I'm gonna grab my signatures right here.
Cool.
Okay. This is a 1973 picture. Okay. Now it's got, it's, you know, obviously a gold top. It's got the pickups are low impedance and high impedance. Okay, there's a high impedance out here on the front. Sorry, right there. And then that's the low impedance. Okay,
Wow.
why do you want low impedance pickups? If you're recording direct, it's a really cool sound. How much do you use it? Very rarely, but it's cool to have. Okay, when I was in New York doing sessions and going from studio to studio every day, if I didn't know what the producer wanted, if I didn't have an idea of what was going on, I would bring this guitar.
Wow.
Because it's so versatile. Okay, so there's an in and out of phase switch here. There's also a mid sweep. There's like a frequency bump that is 50, 200, or 500. And it's so there's so many different tones you can get with this guitar.
I've never seen it. It's awesome.
Yeah. They're if you know the meters, Leo used one of these. Not a lot of players used them. Otherwise, they'd be much more valuable because they only made them for a couple of years. I think 73 to 75.
Wow. Wow. Now you have quite the guitar collection. I remember there was a Premier guitar or someone chronicled your library of instruments.
Yeah, I have quite a few and I'm selling a lot of them.
Oh yeah. I'm always in the market for new guitars.
I'm buying a bursts, but I also have a lot of amplifiers. A lot of amplifiers.
Well,
Way too many.
But it makes sense though, because it's you have every color you could possibly need if you need it, and that
I like to, like we were talking about, I like to have a very large palette.
Yeah.
To paint with, yeah.
All right, so then we're going to pick your brain then on some of your choices here. So this is my ending segment for the show.
Okay.
Just because I know you got to get out of here for other things, but it's a series of this or that questions. You can answer just one or the other. You don't have to justify it, but feel free to justify your answer. That makes it more fun. There are no wrong answers, with the exception of one. I believe there is an incorrect answer, and that's just my super strong opinion, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right. Humbucker or single coil?
Oh,
yeah, these questions suck. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, and what qualifies a humbucker? I mean, is that two coils? Because is a Filtertron a humbucker?
Yeah, I know that they're not easy.
Yeah, man, I don't know that I could pick one or another.
Okay.
I mean,
you get a pass. That's okay. We'll go to the next
one. P90s.
I know.
PAFs. Tellies. Man.
You know what?
There's no way I could pick between.
But you just made my day, because I've asked that question to about 50 different incredible musicians along the way, and everyone so quickly just says one or the other. But you're 1,000,000% right that there are a million notches down as you go from, well, what is a humbucker? And then what if it's a mini humbucker? That sounds different than a humbucker, and so on and so forth.
Completely different. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I use this guitar. That's a 53 Esquire with a PAF in the neck. Okay. I use that just as much as I use this guitar, which is a 1960 335. Okay, so the guitar, there's three guitars sitting right here to my right. One is a 1953 Les Paul Gold Top with P90s. One is the 60 335 with PAFs, and then my Telly. And then right here is my signature model Gretsch. So, I mean, I use those all the time. I'm constantly, and then I've got a Jazzmaster, a 62 Jazzmaster, another Telly, a Strat, two Strats, a 6120. It's like, those are essentials. Those are my. Okay, what's your next question?
So wait, so for Les Paul, so a humbucker or Les Paul, humbucker or single coil, the correct answer is yes, I guess. For
yes.
Les Paul or Strat? If you just
yes.
Boom. Yes, okay. And then Strat or Telly? Yes.
You know what? I love both. I probably go for a Tele more often. I absolutely go for a Tele more often than I go for my Strat.
Okay, cool. All right. So we got one definitive one so far. Les Paul or SG?
A Les Paul.
Okay.
I very, very, very rarely do I think, you know what, I really need an SG on this. You know, it's a Les Paul or a 335, you know,
Cool.
or a Firebird.
Okay.
SG is not an essential to me.
I agree with that thoroughly. Okay, if you were to grab a bass, would it be a P bass or a jazz bass?
I prefer P basses most of the time.
Okay. For an acoustic, a Martin or a Taylor?
Oh God, a Martin.
Okay, thank you. Also
there's nothing wrong with Taylors. Taylors have their place, not in my world, but if you, for the price point, you know, Taylor makes a very consistent, homogenized guitar. It's very consistent. They're always going to sound good. They're always going to play good. They're CNC'd meticulously. But a Martin is handmade.
right.
And I'm back. Gone again. It's cutting in and out.
Okay. I hear your voice, so it's okay.
Okay, so Martins, yeah, I prefer Martins always.
Okay. You know, it's I ask and design all these questions. If you can see the guitars around me, I've been working with PRS Guitars since 2007, and I don't even ask that as an option because I'm just trying to go like ultra traditional, you know.
You know, Gibson or Martin would be a better question for me. And that really depends on the song. It's all about the song. And do I use a double O? Do I use a parlor? You know, it depends. If I'm doing a finger picking thing, you know, there's so many nuances, you know.
I know. They're not easy. I know it.
If I'm doing a big strummy thing, you know, just straight eights, I'm gonna go with a J200.
Okay. All right. For effect pedals, we'll go quick on these. Delay or reverb?
Wait, I have to pick one?
You got to pick one.
EP3. If I had to, yeah, I would go with a delay, a tape delay.
Alrighty. Fuzz or overdrive?
I love them both. I probably use overdrive more.
Okay. More practical. I get that. Phaser or chorus?
Oh God, phaser all day long.
That's
the
one.
Chorus.
That's the right answer. Thank you. Okay, we're friends.
I've never been a chorus fan, even when chorus was popular.
Yeah, phaser.
It always sounded cheesy to me.
Yep, I agree. A phaser, like you can screw with the rate, and you can get so many different colors and flavors out of it.
Phase 90 all day long.
Yes, sir. One knob, all you need.
Or unless you can afford to buy a phase.
All right,
phase 90.
Okay. All right, I got time for one more before I got to let you go.
Is that it?
I got one more. Okay. All right. Beatles or Stones?
Oh God, that's a tough one, man. I don't know that I could pick because I love them both so much. To me, it's black and white. They're total opposites, but they're both essential.
100%. They both provide tremendous value. I totally agree, dude. I don't want to keep you past when I know, but thank you so much for your time. This has been so incredible. Thank you so much. When I repost this, I will chop out our little blip in the middle there, but thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate getting to hang with you tonight.
Yeah, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been great talking to you.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you.
Sorry about the computer issues.
It's technology. We're lucky that we get to do this at all. I'm in New York. I'm not sure which state you're in, but I'm pretty sure you're not in New York also. So
no.
Magic of the internet.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Stay safe. All right. I'll see you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.